Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. Hi, loves. Welcome back to the potty. I'm actually recording from Wurundjeri country today. And so I want to acknowledge the nation's first people, the custodians of this land, as well as their elders, past, present, and emerging, and anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay or listening to the podcast. Turn on the mic. Here to have a little jam with you. Something that I'm working on in my own personal growth and development right now is holding the microphone a little bit lower. As I've listened to little snippets and replays, I feel like I'm holding it way too close and you're hearing every breath in and out. And that is just not a necessity or probably even an enjoyable factor. And so please know that is something I'm bringing awareness and action to. What I want to talk about today is something that shows up in coaching all of the time, but is showing up a lot at the moment, probably because we're in the earlier stages of a Reveal and Rise intake, and I'm at the earlier stages with one of my one-to-one clients as well. And so I want to talk about the biggest hurdle, the biggest mindset hurdle to getting more of whatever it is you want in your life, right? Because the path, that we take to get more of what it is we want in our life is healing and growth. And that's going to be a big part of this conversation, actually, is understanding how much of that is so freaking normal and actually just the way it is when we start progressing and moving towards a goal and stepping out of our comfort zone and something towards something that we want. Right. And so this biggest mindset hurdle that I see every single client come up against in their own individual way is they have to face into breaking down and letting go and the disillusion of this idea that growth should be easy, healing and growth and change should be easy. That it should be comfortable and that it should happen fast or faster than what it is happening. And where this comes from is that, generations upon generations, we've been taught and shown that discomfort is something that we want to avoid, right? And so it's not talked about. And so as we've moved through the world as a child, as a toddler, as a child, into a teen, into an adult, that's been modeled to us, right? The suppression of discomfort or the hiding away of discomfort or the covering up of discomfort. And what we learn from that is that, what we indirectly learn from that is that things should be easy. Things should be comfortable. Things should happen as soon as we want them to happen. And if it's not, then there must be something wrong with us. Or there must be something going wrong. When in actual fact, gosh, I wish I could just scream this from the rooftops. When in actual fact, resistance, reluctance, fear, self-doubt, second-guessing, procrastination, avoidance, this internal instinct to want to run in the opposite direction away from what is being asked of us, often when we step outside of our comfort zone, is so normal, right? It is so normal that it's inherent in the path of growing and expanding to get more of what it is that we want. And something that I see missing a lot from, like the life transition, life change, coaching industry, but not even the coaching industry, it's just society as a whole, it's not the dominant conversation, is that healing, like coming up against our insecurities, feeling incompetent, feeling like we don't know what we're doing and we don't have all the answers, that is embedded in changing our life and getting more of what it is that we want. Right? We don't get to significant end goals without moving through those experiences. And so a question that I love to pose and I want to share with you here right now is, what if you began leaning into the changes you want in your life through the lens that it's supposed to bring up your insecurities and your incompetencies? Yeah. It's supposed to have you feeling resistant, reluctant, scared, right? Because you're moving towards something you've never had before. So you don't actually have the evidence that it's possible for you, right? And that your healing of anything that your nervous system can't process or can't cope with, or any subconscious patterns that would work against, any subconscious patterns, programming, imprints that would work against you being the person that you need to be to get more of what it is that you want, is supposed to come up. It's supposed to feel like it's getting in the way. Because the end goal or the end destination, for sure, it's incredible. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's awe-inspiring and often surreal when we get there. And who you become along the way is what actually enriches your life. Yeah. Your nervous system expansion, your neurology expansion, your consciousness expansion. Yeah. And to put that in the most basic, language and English as possible would be, the skills that you acquire along the way is actually what has you feeling a greater sense of self, a greater sense of confidence, a greater sense of joy and competency and capability and direction and clarity and understanding of who you are, what you want in this world, and that you can go after that, right? The end goal, and for anybody listening to this that has been through this process before of really transforming their life, they will know too, the end goal is great, but it's what you actually discover and believe about yourself once you're at that place that holds the richness. And for us to be able to discover those things and believe that we are brilliant, we are capable, we are intelligent, we are beautiful, we are amazing, we have to look at any of our inner workings that aren't on board with that. And so the biggest mindset hurdle that I see, the most frequent and lengthy conversations I have with my clients, is really around letting this process be hard, letting this process be scary, letting this process feel uncertain and unknown and unsafe, and supporting them in getting clear on what is causing that to be the case, what is feeling unsafe about this. Yeah, what has hardship seeming like a really big problem that can't be overcome, right? Because there will be limiting beliefs and subconscious stories within each and every one of us. Nobody's immune. That when discovered and looked at, no longer present as that feeling of resistance or as that feeling of avoidance or, inverted commas, air quotes, self-sabotage anymore. Yeah. And this can show up in an obvious way. Some of you listening to this might be nodding your heads and you're very able to identify it and say, yep, hand in the air, 100%. I'm totally avoiding what I know I need to do to get to where I want to go because it feels so hard. It feels so uncomfortable and I can't tolerate that. Yeah. And then there will be, for some of us, it'll be playing out in a more subtle way, right? And so that might be where we're trying to negotiate with how hard it should be. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about how we didn't expect it to feel this hard. Yeah. Or we're spending a lot of time acknowledging and talking about all the ways that it's really hard that we didn't expect. Yeah. For those of you watching on YouTube, I just lowered the mic. I'm working on it. Another way that it can subtly be showing up, that we're believing, oh, like, really, I feel like this should be easier. This should be more comfortable. This should be happening faster. And I'm not willing to surrender to the truth of what this actually looks like when I want to create a big change in my life. Is that we might be sitting in waiting energy. So we're just gathering more and more awareness. Yeah. We're looking to like perfect the routines or perfect the strategies around the hard parts of our life or around the difficult parts of our life or the draining parts of our life. Yeah. Instead of either really being honest with ourselves about what is making that hard and difficult or stepping into action. Yeah, we're waiting back in this assessment observer energetic instead of leaning in to moving forwards and doing some of these actions, doing some of these behaviors, even though it will be messy and awkward and uncomfortable and may give us feedback that one step forward was not the best option and we can sidestep and take a new step forward. This is all part of getting more of what we want. This is all part of getting the end goal, right? And so if we try and almost like surgically remove the healing and the messiness and the resistance and the ego that can come up as we move towards a goal, the painful emotions, the nervous system overstimulation and reactions, then we're no longer looking at all the pieces to the puzzle that are required to get that end goal. We're actually like quite literally what we're asking for is to complete the puzzle, but not use half of the puzzle pieces, right? And I feel like that's a great analogy because it shows like, one, how unrealistic it is, but also how important this piece is and why I feel like that metaphor really demonstrates too why these conversations take up, quite a bit of a client's, coaching experience at the beginning. Is we're really having to debunk these mistruths and these lies that it should be easier. Yeah. That it should be happening faster. I was having a conversation with a girlfriend recently, and one of the things that I was sharing with her is I just don't believe that we have awareness to all of the lessons that we need so that we can acquire the skills that we need to get to the end goal, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't need the lessons, right? If we had that level of awareness and knowledge and wisdom, we wouldn't be in the shit still. We wouldn't be in the hard parts still. We wouldn't be in the mess. It's actually required. And in my opinion, we become very arrogant and we're operating from this place of ego when we believe that we can take those puzzle pieces and say, no, those don't need to be part of my journey. Those don't need to be part of my life experience. I always know best. I know everything. I'm always right. Yeah. And so really the purpose of this conversation and the one thing I would love you to walk away with is that the hard and painful parts of healing, it's not a mistake that they show up when we're working towards a goal. And that is the attitude I see a lot of women, and not to be shamed, to the best of their knowledge and the best of their ability, it's almost this experience of shock. Yeah. Oh, like, why should I have to be looking at all of these insecurities? And why is this self-doubt coming up? And why am I wanting to run in the other direction? That shouldn't be happening. And so if I ask you the question, what would happen if you fully accepted that going after the goals that you want, the vision of life that you want, requires you to up-level your nervous system. It requires you to up-level your subconscious programming. And to do that, it requires vulnerability. Yeah. And so, yeah, just to recap that part, it can be showing up in an obvious way. I've definitely been able to put my hand up in the past with that. And it can be showing up in a subtle way. And I've definitely been able to put my hand up around that as well, right? Another example of that, and I'll have really like very clean, honest conversations with clients about this, is that we might be investing in ourselves, right? That could be through listening to this podcast, could be through buying a book, or you could be working with a coach like me one-on-one, right? And yet you've still got one foot out. Yeah. You've still got this exit plan. You can tell that you're not fully on board with creating the change that you want in your life and getting to that end goal because you haven't decided if it's going to be worth it yet, or you're not sure if, well, and here's where this misconception of how easy and comfortable and fast it should happen comes into play, is if you're believing it should be all of those things, and then you're having an experience where it's not, it's very easy to question, oh, am I taking the right approach? Do I have the right strategy? And we're going to get into that. Because when that happens, the realization of how hard and sometimes lengthy and definitely uncomfortable change in getting your goals and life vision can be, actually begins to be used as this safety net and this protective mechanism. So we're going to circle back to that. And so before I do, I wanted to talk about why I see this as the biggest hurdle that women face into with their mindset. And I really feel like I've covered that a lot already. However, what I will say, and I'll just recap it. Yeah, the recap is we're not taught that our insecurities, our incompetencies, and our healing is a normal part of progressing in life. Yeah, instead, we're actually taught to hide that and cover it up and push it down and try and just override it. Yeah, to be less lazy and be more disciplined and more focused and to work harder. And so it takes a decent amount of time, but also a decent amount of willingness for women to let go of that programming and of that story. And the ironic thing is that when they do, and I'm talking about surrender and acceptance here, which is something we move in and out of. It's not a state we arrive to and then stay at forever. But when we do surrender and when we do stop playing that role of dictator in our healing and growth, yeah, so we stop saying it should be this and it shouldn't be that, and I shouldn't have to do this part, I should only have to do this, right? And so let's go back to the puzzle. The dictator piece would be like, I should be able to complete this puzzle without needing these puzzle pieces. The most ironic thing happens. When we surrender and accept that it's hard, it becomes easier. Because we're no longer fighting against ourselves and we're no longer fighting against the process. And we actually get to be in the healing, like fully in the healing, not just going through the motions of doing the ritual or the journaling or showing up to the coaching call or whatever it might be, reading a chapter every day, right? Because those can actually be behaviors we're hiding behind and not doing any healing with, right? But when we actually surrender to, okay, this is going to have its own timeline. And because it's a lesson that I need to learn and acquire skills from, I don't actually yet know how long it needs. I don't know all of what it's going to look like. Yeah. All of a sudden it becomes easier and momentum and progress actually gets to happen because you're in the healing and you're in the growth. Yeah. With both feet, not just one. So that's why I see it as the biggest hurdle, because it takes a lot for women to deprogram this idea that hard, discomfort, distress, like little by little, a little becomes a lot, is safe, right? Because we're also taught that productivity, efficiency, performance, it all needs to happen immediately and it all needs to be known and you need to be able to explain everything, right? And so it takes a lot to shift out of this self-shaming, self-judgment perspective of why is this so hard and it shouldn't be this hard and there's something wrong with me because it's this hard and I'm failing because it's this hard and I must be doing it wrong because it's this hard, or I've chosen the wrong method to solve this problem because it's this hard, and shift into, oh my gosh, my nervous system struggles with uncertainty. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and I feel exposed. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how good I'm going to be at this. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know what sort of skills it's going to ask of me. I don't know how messy and awkward it's going to look. I don't know how many times I'll need to be the beginner and the learner. And that feels dangerous, right? Because I know that if I do things perfectly and if I do them efficiently, and if I can explain everything, then I'm easy, I'm convenient, I'm valuable, and I'm loved. And so when I am those ways, I know I'm accepted by my tribe. Yeah, whether that is your colleagues or your family or your friends. Yeah, but when I step into this new way of doing things and looking at things, which I haven't done before, I'm not so sure of how I'll be viewed. I'm not so sure of what I'll be feeling. I'm not so sure of what I'll be asked, what will be asked of me. Yeah. It feels risky. And it requires self-trust. And for most women, it will require the deepest self-trust they've ever asked of themselves. And so that can feel like, let's say there's, and I explain this analogy based on how it felt for me. Yeah, the first time I significantly did this, that can feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff and there's only a 2 centimeter gap. And then you're on the edge of the next cliff, right? But to your nervous system and to your neurology, it feels like you're asking yourself to jump across a valley from one cliff to another that is 2 kilometers apart, right? Like absolutely unobtainable, unrealistic, impossible. And so it's a very uncomfortable process. Yeah. Surrendering and letting this be hard. And, to circle back and tie that up, that's why I believe this is the biggest hurdle. What I see is that when women understand this, when women move into a place of self-trust, when women arrive to this place where they decide, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of being in my head. I'm so sick of feeling so like unclear and anxious and stressed and overwhelmed. that I'm ready to try something new, even if it doesn't work out. Yeah. I'm ready to let go of the painful existence that I'm sitting in right now and trust the process, take a leap of faith that so long as I'm being honest with myself and I'm doing my best, even if that best is like feeling very messy and very difficult and awkward, that I am moving forwards. Yeah. And they allow themselves to fully try, to fully find out what would happen if they let themselves try. Yeah. Over and over and over again. And nothing really changes until women can surrender and accept. And it's very interesting because I'll see everything from, a 1 hour coaching conversation to 12 months or more in terms of how long a woman needs to stay in this deliberation and consideration and contemplation of, am I going to let this be hard? Am I going to let this be uncomfortable? Am I going to let this take whatever time frame it takes? And so this is the irony again, right? Is you can decide that in any moment. When you're ready, you're ready. And actually what draws out the most time is the deliberation around this. And so, yeah, for some women, I see them, this just clicks for them. They get it, they understand it, and they're ready to choose themselves and they've let go of this idea that fear must be absent before they can move forwards and that they have to know all the answers and they have to be able to do it perfectly before they can move forwards. And then for other women, they're just not ready. Yeah. And so there's this gripping and gripping and gripping and gripping. And what I see most commonly ties into that is there'll be some heightened fear of what will be asked of them. Okay, so to close out this conversation, I want to talk about why I believe this shows up. Yeah. And the most common thing I see and the most common reason I think this shows up is because we live in a world, yeah, where we are taught to seek out and very quickly adopt the strategy that produces productivity, efficiency, and high performance. So there's this glorification of strategy, right? And strategy that can be replicated, yeah, that is generalized, that can be like typed out and printed on a document and circulated. Yeah. Some of the ways that I hear this too is like, where's the spreadsheet for that? Or what's the 5-step process for that? And there's very little attunement to the individual human being in that process. Yeah. And one of the first places this starts out is in our schooling and in our education, right? Like there's one way for you to move through that system to get a result that then determines what happens in that next season of your life. Yeah. And so there's this gratification of strategy, and then there's this minimization of sensitivity and intuition to the point where we actually say, oh, they're just being sensitive. Yeah, they're oversensitive. They're too sensitive. And, I want to throw something out here, which you may have heard me share before, but, sensitivity is a great intelligence. It's the wisdom of our body. Yeah, it's showing us when something is heightened. It's the body speaking to us, our ability to sense when something feels good or when something feels bad, when something feels right, when something feels wrong, when something feels like it's true, or when something feels false or off or just not quite right. And we can't necessarily put our finger on what that is. We can't necessarily type up a report and churn it out. And if we could, it wouldn't be the same for every single person. Right? It's that gut feeling. It's the feedback that our nervous system is giving us. It's the curiosity and awareness around what subconscious programming specific to my experiences. Yeah. And of course, there'll be overlaps with other people. But what subconscious programming specific to my past experiences and specific to the goal that I'm wanting to work towards isn't actually a fit. It's a mismatch. And every time I try and use that programming to get further ahead, yeah, in my truth, to become more expressed from my heart, to progress in the vision that I have for my life that lights up every cell in my body, I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall. I feel like some hurdle or some problem or some pain point pops up and gets in the way, right? We minimize the intelligence of the body. And so, you know, when the world of strategy is sold to us and we see dominant society adopting that, it feels safest to also try and adopt that as well, right? And we live in a society that struggles with vulnerability. Yeah, dominant society isn't coming forward and saying, hey, like this is feeling off in my body or this is feeling difficult. Yeah. Even once most people have accomplished great success, there won't be this open-hearted, vulnerable sharing of what was required to get there. Yeah. Or maybe it's actually been built upon trauma patterns. And so it's been this pushing and this urgency and this method of escaping themselves and distracting from themselves that has been a powerful enough motivation for them to continue pushing an agenda in their life to get to a certain point. Yeah. And maybe part of them feels like that actually isn't worthy of being shared, or they reach that destination, yeah, of that season, that goal, that part of their life vision, and it doesn't feel fulfilling. So they don't feel competent in teaching that or sharing that or contributing that wealth of knowledge back into communities, right? Because deep down they realize, I don't feel like I have it all figured out, even though I got to where I thought I wanted to be. Yeah, which circles back to a part of this conversation earlier on where I said, the richness comes from the strengthening of your sense of self, of your sense of confidence, of your sense of joy, and understanding who you are. Right? If you arrive to each goal with the same insecurities, the same self-doubt, the same incompetencies, it's really hard to believe in yourself. And you don't have anything to leverage when you set up to go to the next level. Yeah. The other thing that I see is almost like, the visual that came through as a metaphor to explain this last bit is like a train station. So if the first station is, I thought that creating this change and getting this goal should be easier and more comfortable and quicker than what it has been. And then we arrive to the next station where, okay, like I can't deny this is harder than I thought it was going to be. This is going to take longer than I thought it was going to be. This is not so comfortable, right? But there's still some resentment around that or some bitterness towards that, or we're still wishing it would be different. Yeah, which are all signs that we haven't surrendered, we haven't accepted. Sometimes what can happen at that station before we arrive to the third station of acceptance and surrender is that we start using the hardness as an excuse, yeah, or as this protective mechanism of, yeah, like I really wanted that, but maybe I don't have time after all. Yeah. Or I really want that, but it just doesn't seem like it's possible for me. I really want that, but I just can't seem to figure out how. And it's not that some of these things are completely absent. Like maybe you don't know how. But not knowing how doesn't also stop you from moving forwards, right? You get to ask a question. You get to ask for help. You get to do some research. You get to go out into the world, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. I love social media for this, is you get to look at who's gotten to where you want to go and how can you model some of what they were doing, or what they're doing now. We use the new knowledge that change and transition to a new season of life is hard as an excuse as to why we can't do it and we can't have it. But actually what we're trying to protect ourselves from is, I don't know what's going to happen like in my relationships if I grow in this way or if I go in this direction. Will I still be loved? Will there still be a connection? Am I going to outgrow them? Am I going to have to leave them behind? Will I be talked about? Will people laugh at me if I don't get it right the first, second, third, or fourth time? Will I be rejected? Will people be critiquing me? Will I have to face into opinions that I don't want to hear? And again, all of these problems are literally beautifully revealing to you where in the nervous system and where in the subconscious there is a piece of healing so that that no longer remains as a problem and you get to progress beyond it. So that's a little piece I wanted to contribute and offer out into the world today, is that if you're feeling shocked or disheartened or frustrated or resentful at how hard something is, whether it be in business, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be with your health or with money or whatever it might be, if you're facing into something that you know in your heart is part of the vision you want to create for your life, it's really, really important to you. You feel connected to having this thing, and yet you feel completely dumbfounded and frustrated and disconnected from how to get there because you thought it would be easier. You thought you'd have more results for the work that you've done. You thought it would happen more quickly. You thought there were certain things you wouldn't have to look at or you wouldn't have to deal with or conversations you wouldn't have to have. Then I would love for you to let this episode sink in. And have some patience with yourself. Okay, leaving it here. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.